How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Touchdown Alabama's breakdown of the Alabama High School Athletic Association playoffs. And we're talking about the second round of the playoff. The first round was very eventful, like expected. We saw a couple of games go not as expected in terms of the lower seed pulling off a win over a higher seed. But we were happy and excited to be back with my guys, Larry Rudolph, one of our top contributors here at Touchdown Alabama, Dex Preps of Dex Tobert of Dex Preps, my bad. But of course, always love to have Dex. He's very versed in terms of high school football, in terms of recruiting. Both of these guys are, and that's why I'm excited to have them on with me today. And we're going to talk about the entire bracket, each classification again, but we're also going to talk about some key games. And that is exactly where this show is going to start. The first game up is Bayside versus Randolph County. This is a 3A matchup in the 3A bracket, and it is very intriguing for a lot of different reasons. When you take a look at Randolph County, they are one of those teams I talked about earlier in the show who pulled off an upset to open the first round. They defeated Thorsby, who had a 9-1 record, behind the legs of Mo Winston, who rushed for more than 400 yards, had 7 touchdowns, made plays on defense as well. And this is a matchup that has become very interesting. But I want to start with you, Dex, and you can talk about Randolph County a little bit and kind of like what they bring to the table with Winston.
Well, Randolph County is more like a smash mouth football team. They run the wishbone. Of course, you mentioned it starts with Mo Winston and Maurice Winston, but we call him Mo. Last game, 449 yards, 7 touchdowns. Actually, could have had an 8th touchdown. He was on his way to a score, and he just slid down. So, it shows that sportsmanship on his end. Makes plays on defense. Very dynamic running back. Not the biggest running back, maybe around 180 pounds. But man, he's fast. When I say fast, he's fast. So he's a 4.40 kid, a sub 11 100-meter kid. He gets the job done for him. So defense. I think they're pretty okay on defense, but I think they're mostly making their name because of Mo Winston on offense. So but I think playoff time comes. They're gonna kind of put it together and Bayside. I know Larry knows a lot about Bayside, so he can actually chime in and tell us what they bring to the table.
Yes, man. Dex, man. Bayside, they're coming off a victory as well over Houston Academy. They won 46-7. 2028 quarterback Davis Barnett, his first playoff start. He went 21 of 26, 315 yards and 5 touchdowns. So this Bayside offense, led by head coach Bear Trotter, who used to be a quarterback at Auburn. They are explosive. They have guys all over the field. They have Monroe Parton, who is a Wake Forest commit, who is actually he gonna be in town. He gonna be in Tuscaloosa for the Alabama and Oklahoma game. They have guys all over the field, and they have Will Allen. He has 7 sacks against Tuscaloosa Academy, and they got Billy
Oh
Neal,
wow!
who's one of the most underrated linebackers in the state of Alabama, man. So this Bayside team is 10-1. They lost to the number 1 team in 4A, St. Michael's. So yeah, man, I really think it's gonna be a great game. You got Randolph County, who could try and slow this thing down. You got
Yeah,
Bayside, who has this high power offense. So I'm very excited, man.
Yeah,
you said you said 7 sacks in one game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I made a tweet
Wow,
about it. I made a tweet
that's
about
crazy.
it.
That's crazy. So
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that this game is going to come down to is kind of like what you guys talked about. And I think Larry basically said it. He listed all those guys off Bayside. And of course, when you take a look at Randolph County, they're a talented team, but they're a team that has this one elite player who's really good. You want to give him the football because he's so dynamic. He's a tough runner. Like I talked to you, Dix, and I text you so many times watching him Thursday night. I was like, dang, he did it again. He broke through again.
yeah,
Oh, it's another run. He's taking over this matchup because that's how dynamic he was. But from a scheme standpoint, you just have to think that a Bayside Academy will stack the box against
yeah,
a Randolph County and say, hey, if you guys are going to beat us, we're going to try to make someone else beat us who's not named Mo Winston. So it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see if Randolph County can probably throw some wrenches in their offensive game plan and say, hey, we're just not going to give him the football. Let's try different ways to get him the football. Basically try to get him in space and match up against guys. I think he's dynamic. He, like I said, he fights for extra yards, but he's going to have his hands full against a talented Bayside team. But this matchup is really intriguing because of what he brings to the table, also because of what side is bringing to the table. So this could be a really, really good matchup. And I think this matchup just point to what we were saying on the last time we went basically did a show, me and you, Dex, and I know Larry, we talked about this too before last week's game, is that 3A is so talented. 3A is probably one of the tough classifications. Definitely was underrated. I think a lot of times 6A got talked about, but 3A deserves to be in the conversation in terms of just being an intriguing bracket. And speaking of 3, another game that we're going to be watching, it's Fife versus Piedmont. When you take a look at Piedmont, they have a talented wide receiver, and Rolly Pinto broke a state record on last season. He's dynamic, has as dynamic of a wide receiver inside the state who's not named Sadarian Morgan or Deshaun Spencer or Corey Barber. He belongs in that conversation as well in terms of him being a dynamic wide receiver. I know he's another guy who Dex. Can you talk about what he brings to the table and what Piedmont brings to the table as a whole?
Man, Raleigh Pinto, man, like you said it all, very dynamic. Not only a receiver, man, he can run the ball as well. So, very athletic kid, hard worker. Put on a lot of muscle this year. I think he's up to about like 190 pounds now. I think he was like 178, 180 last year. So as you can see right here, great balance, athleticism. I mean, you name it, he can do it. If they put him on defense, he could probably play defense too. So, he's committed to Jacksonville State. And honestly, man, I actually think Jacksonville State's getting a steal in Pinto, man. Just one of the top kids I've seen, in our area, but not just in the area, but in the state. So he belongs in that conversation, like I said, with the Sadarian Morgans, Corey Barbers, those type guys. He's really that good. They have a running back by the name of Nick Mixon. Now he's pretty good. He transferred in from another school. The quarterback is actually a solid quarterback as well. So he gets the ball to Pinto. He spreads the ball out well to other receivers and there's other playmakers as well. So, and the defense side of the ball, Piedmont's always been solid when it comes to defense. So I think with Fife, the traditional Fife team's always been really good. I'm not sure if they are kind of like the Fife of last year, with the Logan Anderson and stuff, but at the same time, there are Fife. They're very fundamentally sound. They're gonna get the job done. They're gonna fight. They're gonna scrap. They're some of the toughest kids I ever seen comes from Fife High School. So they're gonna make a game of it with Piedmont because it's more of a traditional type thing. It's gonna be an ego thing. It's gonna be a pride thing. A lot of people are saying the fight may be down this year. I know I just mentioned it, but they don't want to hear that. So they're gonna come into this game and they're gonna give it all they got.
And speaking of Fife, I think one of the things I talked about when I talked about them on the last show is that, like you said, Dex, they are physical. They are a team that plays with a lot of pride because they have had a lot of success. I was able to peek in on their game last week, and they struggled to start off the game, came off a little slow, but in terms of just them being disciplined, they look like the traditional Fife. And like we saw in that video, they can be explosive with that type of offense. And this game is going to have contrasting styles. Piedmont is an offense that has a spread offense. They're going to get the ball to Rolly Pinto, whether he's coming in motion. They're going to give him a screen pass. They're going to give him the ball a variety of ways. It's not the old school offense in any type of way. It's an explosive offense. And you can't win, and you can't basically break state records like Pinto did in the passing game last year if your offense isn't as explosive or wide open as Piedmont has been. So I will think this matchup is intriguing because I feel like it's contrasting styles, but at the heart of it, these are two programs with great tradition of winning, tradition of having success. We all talked about how Piedmont was a school that just was constantly in the state championship, and Fife has been on the run for over the last couple of years. So Fife and Piedmont is a game that we will be watching in 3, but we're not leaving 3A just yet because I think it just consistently speaks to the fact that 3A is one of the classifications that everyone needs to be talking about. And the next game is a game that Larry, you're gonna know a little more about, probably way more about than me and Dex. And we're talking about Southside Selma and Cottage Hill as they go at it in the 3A classification. What can you tell us about both of these teams, Larry?
I got you. Both teams have young quarterbacks. I'll start with Cottage Hill Christian. They have Shamar Tootle, who's a 2028 quarterback. He does have a Baylor offer, and he just got a shout out from Cam Ward of the Tennessee Titans. So he making a name for himself in the state of Alabama. But he's grown. He started last year as a freshman, not his sophomore year, and he one of those guys. He can run the ball. He's strong. IQ. He can make the throws. And then you go over to Southside Selma, Cole Moody, who is the state's leading passer. And like you said, just in this 3A classification, man, needs a little more attention because they have the state's leading passer and rusher. So Cole Moody over 4,500 passing yards. He has 53 touchdowns as of right now. He's 5'7", 150 pounds, but he plays much bigger than that. He has Armani Towns, who is a Purdue commit, 6'7" threat out there who plays wide receiver, tight end, and edge rusher for Southside Selma. Then you got Cedric Simmons, who's a 2027 wide receiver athlete. He plays wide receiver and safety for Southside Selma. He has an Auburn offer. So it's athletes all over the field for both teams. I do think the advantage, in my opinion, I would go to Cottage Hill. They have one of the most underrated players in the whole country, I would say. Caleb Minster. He's committed to South Alabama. He's an edge rusher, but he also plays wide receiver for Cottage Hill, and he has 24 and a half sacks, guys. Like, that's like nationally ranked. So he's 6'3", 235 pounds, and he can play. He plays both sides of the ball, Ironman football. And then of course you have Shadarius Tootle, who's an Auburn linebacker commit. He was recently committed to Georgia, but he flipped back to Auburn again. He one of those guys sideline to sideline. He's fast, he can cover. So this may be a shootout, guys. Could be a shootout, or it's going to be a defensive game. Both teams have athletes. Both teams can throw the ball. So I'm excited to see how it go, man. And both teams have successful coaches in Charles Moody and Carvel Jones.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that what you said, Larry, you did a great job breaking it down. I think you did a great job putting the tail of the tape in terms of this matchup because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Dex. I don't know how many times we've seen 3A football and you talk about Deadman offers on the field at the same time.
No, that's crazy, man. This is like a 6A, 7A team. I mean, you got SEC offers, you got P4 offers, you got pass rushers and sacks in the country. You got one of the leading, passers in the country. So that's just crazy for, coming from a 3A game, but, that's Alabama high school football. We produce a lot of talent. So, we don't want to sell ourselves short, too much. But, what I'm saying, that is a great accomplishment for a 3A, program. So.
And I think just looking at what you guys have said, and also talking to you, Larry, hearing what you're saying tonight, I think this game comes down to those dynamic athletes on Southside Selma. Can Cottage Hill Christian stop those game breakers? Because watching that game and keeping up with it, just watching it, and it was a tough game. It went back and forth, got heated at the end, but I just remember the game appearing to like break open for Southside Selma when those dynamic players made plays. When Towns got the interception and took it back. When Cedric Simmons caught the pass and ran it in. So it seemed as if Southside Selma, those guys are dynamic game changers, game breakers. Can Cottage Hill Christian stop those guys from being what they are? Game changing type of athletes in Cedric Simmons and Towns. So I think that is going to be the narrative, and I think that's going to be the thing that we follow in that matchup for Cottage Hill Christian and Southside Selma.
So one of the things I'm kind of interested in that game too, that the pass rusher, that Cottage Hill has, how much will he affect the quarterback? I know the quarterback, like Larry said, he's a smaller quarterback, very talented, of course, but how will he be able to, interrupt the flow of his game? How is he gonna, has he faced anybody like that yet this year that will bring the pressure on him? So that's going to be a good matchup, and it's going to be very intriguing to see, how he plays against that type of pressure.
That's a great question, Dex. Yeah. That's a great question. Caleb is relentless. Tootle is relentless. So I watched in that Dadeville game. They got to him, and he has the veteran mindset. He throws the ball away. He's not gonna force a throw, which is great. He did have a pick against Dadeville, but he was just trying to get rid of the ball. He made a bad read, but man, it's gonna be exciting to see. Caleb can get to the quarterback. I think his highest sacks in the game was like 6 or 7. So he can get back there. So it's gonna be a great matchup, Dave. That's a great question.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, but in terms of this Cottage Hill Christian Southside Selma game, I think one of the things that probably, in terms of a schematic standpoint, you'll probably see Cottage Hill put pressure on Southside Selma's quarterback in a lot of different ways. It's probably the smartest thing you do. Younger quarterback, undersized. Let's make the throwing lanes. Let's block the throwing lanes a little bit so he's not able to
Yeah.
be and get the ball to those dynamic athletes. But we're gonna move up a classification and talk about our next game. And this is a game that is really, really interesting because it's it's similar to this game. It's gonna be a lot of offers in this game because Jackson is playing. When Jackson is playing, they probably got every offer in the country just on their roster alone. But Hanley and Jackson is a game that a lot of people are gonna have their eyes on, and this matchup is intriguing for a lot of different reasons as well. And I'll start with you, Larry, because I know you know a lot about Jackson, and you can just talk about Jackson in particular, just what makes this team so dynamic.
Well, hey man, when it comes to Jackson, you got to pick your poison. You got Landon Duckworth, South Carolina quarterback commit. He can make every throw to ever live on the field. And Jackson, they just got a boost. They got North Carolina wide receiver commit Keon Chapman. He is back. He got hurt very, very early in the season. He came back last week against Ashford. He scored a touchdown. He only needed one hand. And then, of course, we get to the elephant in the room, not literally because he's committed to Alabama. Xavier Crowell, 5-star running back, can do it all. He is truly dynamic. He is truly a special kid. 1,600 yards on the season, 20 touchdowns. He missed a game. He missed the opening game against Saraland. So this I just think it's gonna be tough on Hanley, man, to try and slow this down because if you load the box, Landon Duckworth has two North Carolina commits he can throw the ball to, one being Keon Chapman and the other one being Jamarion Gordon. And then his defense, Jackson's defensive line has really grown on me, man. They are stout against the run and the pass. Corners are committed as well to North Carolina. So it's this team is loaded, and I don't see Hanley slowing them down, but I do know Hanley has they have a tough running game. I know how they go. I know they play stout defense as well. So I'm just excited to see this matchup, Justin and Dix.
Yeah, with Hanley, I agree. Jackson is loaded, man, so it's going to be hard to beat him. But I think Hanley, they're gonna kind of counter. They got their quarterback. I think his name Cordarian Patterson. 6'4", 225. He's committed to Bethune Cookman as a running back. He's a dual threat. As Justin stated, man, the kid's hard to bring down. But at the same time, it's gonna go against Jackson. They're loaded. And everybody I talk to, man, they say Hanley, don't discount Hanley, So they're close to my area. So I just know that they're actually really solid. They tough nose type football, strong boys, country boys. On defense, they have a guy by the name of Christopher Sutton that doesn't get a lot of pub. He's built on the mold of Keenan Brett, the South Carolina commit from Oxford High School. So as you say, Jackson, they got the Power 4 commits, the SEC commits. So it's going to be, kind of a tough game, but we'll see what happens. Like they said, that's why you play the game. You never know what could happen. So I just know Hanley's going to go in, give it all they got. They got a lot of pride in their program too. So I'm interested to see how this is going to come out. But as you say, said Jackson is loaded. It's going to be hard to beat those guys.
And Patterson is probably going to be one of the players that play a factor in this one way or the other. If Jackson cannot contain him, that's when he becomes dangerous, when he's able to run the football. As you guys seen in the clips earlier, he's 6'4", 220 pounds. So it's hard to get a guy like that down. But like you said, Larry, I saw Jackson play earlier this season against Demopolis, and that front seven was very, very disruptive. And Demopolis was more of a team that wanted to run the football. So I know Jackson has a physicality to match that. But I think one of the dangerous things about playing Jackson is, are you going to be able to slow down that offense as a whole? And it's kind of like pick your poison. Are you going to try to load the box to try to stop Xavier Crowell? Or are you going to lighten the box? I don't think you can line the box against Crowell. It's like asking to get beat. Why would you line the box against how dynamic? He's one of the most complete running backs that I've ever evaluated. But then if you stack the box, you got Landon Duckworth. You have the North Carolina commits that he's going to throw the football to. And that's why Jackson is the reigning 4A state champion. So this is going to be interesting because of that. But I think if Hanley wants to win this, I think they have to control time of possession. I think they had to keep the football away from Jackson. if you want
Yeah.
to win, if you are Hanley. So we're going to be watching this one because it's very interesting for the reason that both of you guys have said in terms of these programs. Just another great game that we're going to be paying attention to. We're going to jump forward to talk about our last two games. In the first game, we're going to talk about in 6A, it's Parker versus Muscle Shoals. I think when you take a look at Muscle Shoals, because I've had an opportunity to watch them play early in the season. I actually saw that spring game as well. Their offense is not explosive, but they can make plays. They can move the football up the field, but I wouldn't call it explosive just based on what I saw and based on what I know about them. But their defense is really stout. It's really talented. It's led by Kamarion Johnson, the Alabama commit, the edge. He plays defensive end. He lines up all across the Muscle Shoals defensive front, and their defense is just really, really good. When you talk about a Parker team, the reigning 6A state champions, they have a dynamic offense. We have Dylan Reese. We talked about Dylan Reese during this football season. He's a guy who has grown as a passer, and I think this is probably going to be the part of the game we're going to pay attention to most when it comes to Parker and Muscle Shoals. It's going to be just the offensive defensive match. When those units are on the field for their respective teams in terms of Parker's offense versus Muscle Shoals defense. I think that's going to be the matchup within the game that we watch the most. But I think this is a matchup that I just want to get you guys an opportunity to comment on, because I think it's one that I feel like we want to learn a little bit more about each of these teams in this matchup. But if you have any thoughts on this, Larry, I have to ask you first.
Yeah, man. Just like what you said, I'm gonna piggyback off you. Dylan Reese has been consistent all year. I worry about Muscle Shoals slowing down this Parker passing attack. Parker offensive coordinator Connor McGavin is in his second year. His first year, he helped lead them to a 6A state championship. So I'm always going to be worried about the Parker offense now as a threat to score every time they hit the field. And then on that defensive front, you talk about Rodney Cleveland, the Texas defensive line commit, and then you got Robert Taylor, who's a junior edge rusher. He has a lot of SEC type offers as well. So these guys are Parker. I know they lost a lot of talent last year, but I want you, Justin. They're the reigning 6A state champions for a reason. I like what Muscle Shoals doing. They can run the ball. I'm not sure about how they pass the ball too much. I know they solid on defense as well. So it's gonna be a tough game. One team gonna try to slow it down, and the other one's gonna try and run the score up. So I'm just excited, man, to see how it goes, and I'm ready to see this game.
Yeah. So do you think? I mean, possibly, both teams are pretty solid on defense. Do you guys see this more as a defensive type game? I mean, I know, we're talking about, the offense. We know how good Reese is. Much respect to him, and they are the defending state champions. But man, both of these defenses are like really solid. Most of the shows even solid on the back end with
Yeah.
the kid. I can't remember his name now, but he's committed to Arkansas as safety. So
Mhm.
this could end up being a defensive battle. I mean, but like I said, we'll see what happens. And I'm excited to see the outcome of this game myself.
To it. But yeah, you're right, Dex. I think that's gonna be the one of the things that we look at in this matchup is both of these teams as defenses. But in terms of their offenses having an edge, I would go Parker's offense an edge over Muscle Shoals' offense. So I think that's gonna be something that we're gonna look at as well in terms of which one of these offenses probably can make the most plays against these stingy defenses. And it almost slipped my mind, which it shouldn't have slipped my mind, that Parker's front defensive front is so good because of Rodney Cleveland and because of Taylor. Those are two talented guys. And so, yeah, and if I had to give the edge to as a whole, I'll probably get the edge to Parker as a team, as a whole, in terms of probably looking at it on paper. But Muscle Shoals has been a team that has been consistent throughout the season. Like I said, they have those book end defensive end. So this is a matchup that we're going to be watching closely. But another matchup we have our eyes on in 6A is Clay Chalkville versus Gaston City. I mean, take a look at Clay Chalkville. We talked about this on the last episode, just talking about how stout their front seven is. But hey, Jackson Olin was running all over that front seven in that first half. But when I guess Clay Chalkville went into halftime, I guess their coaches gave them some words of encouragement because they came out with dominant that second half. I think it was like two forced fumbles like back to back that got like returns to the house or the Clay Chalkville offense scored on them. So this is a matchup that we're going to be watching very, very closely, and I'm going to get your thoughts on it. Dex, just start off, just the overall thoughts. It's based on what you know about each of these programs.
Like you say, Clay Chalkman's got that front seven. The defense is really solid, but the matchup everybody we want to see is Zion Gibson versus Corey Barber. But as you and I talked about, Justin, it's hard to say if we're going to get to see these guys go one on one a lot because Corey moves around so much. Receiver, I think Wildcat running back. I think he runs the ball maybe from running back as well. So outside receiver, slot receiver. So. But Gaston City, that they got a solid quarterback. So they actually got two solid quarterbacks, two different type quarterbacks. I think the first one, can't remember his name. He's more the dual threat. And then Sam, is it Rowley? Is that his last name? From Gaston City, he's more of a pro type passer. So for me, man, I just can't wait to see this game. But the matchup I would like to see, of course, what everybody else wants to see is Corey Barber versus Zion Gibson.
Yeah, I'm gonna get your thoughts, Larry. You go.
Yeah, I'm gonna focus on more on the trenches. That Clay Chalkville offensive line is stout and they got size. Uh, Gaston City, I know they got a few guys, but it's time. Clay Chalkville is really like they're has size and they can really throw the ball with Aaron Fry and Corey Barber, of course, but they can run this game away, in my opinion. I like what Gaston City got though. Sam Solly, a quarterback. They looking nice. They came off a good win last week. This is gonna tell who's been eating. I would say
Yeah.
because the trench play is gonna be amazing with Clay Chalkville.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's kind of like what we're going to be looking at in this because I've actually had an opportunity now that I think about it. That I actually had an opportunity to see both of these teams play in person this season. But when you talk about this matchup, I think I'm going to lean towards what you said, Larry, because unfortunately, and it's just a reality, Gaston isn't as strong in the trenches as Clay Chalkville is. I want to say those are kind of like strengths and weaknesses of each team. Gaston City has a lot of talent outside in terms of skill
Yeah.
players that got a quarterback with high upside. The trenches probably would be not the biggest strength of theirs. When you take a look at Clay Chalkville, they got talent outside now with Corey Barber and the running backs, but that defensive front is so talented and so disruptive. It I know I talked about Corey Barber single-handedly beating Thompson from an offensive in terms of scoring standpoint, but their defensive line, their defense won that game in the second half completely just by the way that they played, and that's kind of like where some of this footage is coming from. You guys are seeing right now when Clay Chalkville defeated Thompson, of course, 7A program, and Clay Chalkville, like we said, it's a 6A program. So this matchup is going to be one that we watch. I think most people pick Clay Chalkville. They are the favorite. They are the team that we still are choosing to be the possibly champion in 6A classification. But I think this game is intriguing. And like you said, Dex, that matchup is going to be one that we're going to be looking forward to see if we can see it. We're going to see it. I think we're going to see it more than we don't see it. But it's going to be times where, like you said, Corey is going to come in motion. He's going to be lined up in the slot. And the last time I saw Zion Gibson in Gaston City, he didn't travel with brother. It was Muscle Shoals best receiver because that's when I saw Gaston City and Muscle Shoals compete in the first week of the high school football season in Alabama, and he didn't travel a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if he does possibly in this game, see if we see that matchup a little bit more. So I think that's going to be something that we watch. Another thing that I would say about this before I throw it to you, Larry, I think you have something to say about this, but when you take a look at Zion Gibson, I think he's a game changer. We talked about game changer, but probably not a game changer in terms of being a defensive back in this one, but probably as a kick returner, punt returner, possibly use him on offense because they have been known to use him like that in the past. Unfortunately, like I told you guys, I think the bad position that Zion Gibson is in is that he can make 1,000 plays against Corey Barber all night. But if Corey Barber burns him 2 times, that play is going viral. It's just like the nature of being Alabama commit and nature of being going up against somebody like Corey Barber. But you can get some thoughts in, Larry.
Yes, sir. I just hope, man. And this is not a part of the show. I just want to add this in since we're recording.
Yeah.
Alabama, Nick Sheridan, Ryan Grubb. I hope they pay attention to this game because Corey Barber should be a University of Alabama wide receiver commit along with Sadarius Morgan. So I just want to add that in, man. He going up against one of y'all guys who y'all chose who's going to be a part of the Crimson Tide next year. But Corey Barber, man, Alabama need to be on that, man.
Yeah, I think they're on him. I think it's probably more so Corey saying I'm sticking with Ole Miss, more so than Alabama saying I want him. I'm pretty sure they'll love to have him because like you said, he's in the conversation to be the best wide receiver alongside Sadarius Morgan. They're probably 1A and 1B. You can choose who you
Yes.
want. Depending on what type of offense you want to run and what type of receiver you want to run because they have contrasting styles as wide receivers, but they both are dynamic. And this is a game that you're going to go to, Larry, and Auburn and Daphne. Auburn was a team that because I was bouncing back and forth watching a lot of different games on Friday night. I thought it was over with for Auburn for the most part because Vestavia Hills beat them early this season. Vestavia Hills jumped out on them in this matchup very, very early on in the first quarter. But Auburn is a team that has a lot of talent, a talented quarterback. Just what are your thoughts about this matchup, Larry?
Yeah, man. Auburn is one of those gritty teams. I say grit. They remind me of a team that just won't give up. You keep you knock them down, knock them down, knock them down, and get back up. They were down 21-0, and just like me, with you, I seen that score. I was like, maybe it's a part two of what Vestavia Hills did earlier. But Casey Myers, who was a 2027 quarterback, he transferred from Pike Road. This year, he has an Auburn offer. He has several other offers. He came back through over 300 yards and led his team back to a win. Auburn is one of those teams who is also tough in the trenches. They got big Carnell Jackson. He's committed to Arkansas. The defensive line commit. He's a three tech naturally. He can really, really play. He's really strong against the run. Those guys have guys over there. They always have guys at Auburn. They're going up against a Daphne team who is trying to make history. That Daphne hasn't been to a semifinals in I don't know how long, probably since they had TJ Yeldon. Actually, it's been a minute. They have Christian Seeger, 2027 quarterback who transferred from Spanish Fort. They have LeBraylon Williams, athlete, wide receiver, running back type who scored 5 touchdowns last week in the playoff game against Sparkman, in which Daphne won 43-14. This Daphne team, they have arguably the biggest offensive line in 7A. Well, in the whole state of Alabama, they all average at least 6'3", 295 to 300 pounds. So this Daphne team is tough in the trenches, man. They tough. But Christian Seeger has like 36 touchdown passes on the season, so they can throw it. Daphne wants to throw the ball. Auburn's defense allowed 40 points last week to Vestavia Hill. So I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup, Daphne's offense versus Auburn's defense.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it to you, Dex. I'm pretty sure you can take off all of that information that Larry throwing at us. You can you probably can take a lot from that.
Yeah, man. Like I said, with Auburn, they're well coached by Keith Eldridge. So I know Coach Eldridge personally. So on both sides of the ball, like I said, they got offensive lineman by the last name Pritchard at Auburn that's committed to Troy. So with Auburn, like I said, they do give up a lot of points. Gave up a lot of points last week, but they kind of remind me of a Rocky Balboa fight. They. Getting swung on, all of a sudden they just get up in the last few rounds. So, and like I said, I'm not that familiar with Daphne, but with Larry, he pretty much gave us all the insight we need to know. So, it should be, it just depends, in my opinion, which Auburn team shows up. So, I just, if I had to pick one, I don't know if we're picking, but I would go with Daphne in this game, just from what I know of the past few weeks. So.
Yeah, that definitely will be, based looking at that 7A classification, definitely will be a new face, at least one half of a new face in the 7A state championship, because I'm not mistaken. I think I might be wrong about this. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Way the 7A is set up, I think that Thompson and Phoenix City will have to
Yes.
play each other before they
Yes.
get to the state championship this year. So it's gonna be a new face. It's not just gonna be Thompson and Phoenix City in the 7A state championship this year. So there's one of those storylines that we're following in terms of that classification, that 7A classification. So we're going to be watching that 7A matchup between Auburn and Daphne. But before we close out this show, we're going to talk about some other games, but really just basically skim over the entire playoff bracket in each classification, starting with 1A. You guys can jump in if you want to say something about any of these games, but we're starting with this 1A classification. Got Maplesville McIntosh. Maplesville is a team that was dominant last week. They're the number one seed, and they probably will continue to be dynamic. Dexter, you want to say anything about Maplesville?
Yeah, I mean, they're giving up maybe 2 points a game, and I think they held the team to like minus 28 yards rushing or something last week. So they're going to be a tough out. Like I say, the South, I feel like the South has the toughest, road to the state championship. It's got Leroy, and I think you mentioned another team. Was it University Charter?
Yeah, University Chargers is the team that.
Yeah, and then so and I just think they're gonna have a tougher road, but I do think Maplesville may end up being a team to beat. I know with Wiley, defending state champion, but man, everybody's talking about Maplesville, so we're gonna see what happens. So.
Yeah, we got Maplesville McIntosh, McKenzie Attack Academy, Leroy Linden. I thought about this matchup on last week. I said something about it. As we said, it could be a matchup. It's gonna be interesting, but Linden, I saw Linden. I didn't see. I technically basically checked in on Linden and Billingsley. And I seen Billingsley play earlier this year. I actually saw Billingsley in Maplesville. Coincidentally, I saw them play early in the season, and Billingsley just wasn't really impressive. And I thought Linden, if Linden was going to be a team that I thought was going to compete for a state championship, I felt they needed to defeat Billingsley a little bit more handedly than they did. So I probably would go Leroy here, but Leroy Linden is another matchup in the 1A classification. I'm gonna go to the other side of the classification. It's also University Charter and Southern Choctaw. University Charter is a school that I watch out for in 1A, like I told you guys. Southern Choctaw and University Charter, I'm pretty sure they play early in the season. Oh, University Charter winning that matchup. On the other side, Addison Berry have Appalachian, Marion County, Watley, Meek. Watley, you probably want to say something about Watley, but that game was a game that was out of control and in control of Watley.
Yeah,
very early on. I want to say it was like I don't remember halftime.
59. It was was it like 50-0 at first quarter or halftime or something like that? So, and the thing about with Watley, just talking to people, everybody's like, well, they're not as good as last year, but actually they're probably better than last year. Honestly, they're more athletic. The thing is, though, and I was talking to a couple of people, everybody said, talking about Jaquez Wilkes, they haven't had to use him yet quite like they did last year. I mean, he hasn't really, I think he's played maybe 2 full games the whole year, maybe 3. So, man, when it comes to playoff time, I think he's got to really turn it on. And they're more than a one-weapon team. So they got Frisco Robinson, they got Cortavius Lynch. So and Des Thomas, they got a nice size offensive line, defensive line for 1A school. So they, defending 1A state champs. So I think, I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping it comes to fruition. Maplesville versus Watley. I think that's going to be a better game than it was last year if it happens again.
Yeah, who's that? Watley, Meek, Hubbardville, Hackleburg. I mean, Hubbardville is another team that we've
Hubbardville's been putting up a lot of points too. So I don't know much about them, but I talked to a parent from Woodland, last week. She was like, "Man, they hit hard and they're really fast." So we'll see what Hubbardville is about in another couple of games. If they have to end up facing Watley. So
yeah, that's definitely another matchup that we'll be watching. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2A classification as well. Let me get that set up for you guys. When you take a look at 2A, you have a couple of interesting matchups for sure. You have prospects in this classification as well. Laverne GW Long, that is a game in this classification. You have Lynette still in it. Lynette is a school that has seemed to have been a school that we've seen whenever they are competing for a spot. They usually are competing for that spot pretty handedly in terms of them being a program that has made strides forward in terms of just becoming more of a football program. But Laverne, GW Long, Lynette Arrington, Cottonwood, Real-Time won the state last year. So that's a matchup to watch out for. Providence Christian, Lochapoka. Lochapoka is a program that I want to say hasn't had a lot of success in recent years. Actually, it was a 3 seed. They beat Goshen, who was a 2 seed in this matchup, 2 seed in this playoff. So that is a matchup to watch out for. Interesting, Providence Christian beat Clark County, who was the 1 seed, and Providence Christian was the 4 seed. So Lochapoka versus Providence Christian, which something I think we don't see all the time, is a 3rd seed versus a 4th seed in the second round, which is interesting. Pleasant Valley, Tuscaloosa Academy. Tuscaloosa Academy lost in the state championship.
Man,
Christian as well.
at Tuscaloosa, Dex, what do you know about Tuscaloosa Academy?
I don't know a lot about them. I heard they don't look quite as strong as they have in the past. So, but I do know a lot about Pleasant Valley. They're in my area. So once you get to Pleasant Valley, I can talk about those guys. But as far as Tuscaloosa Academy, just from what I'm hearing and reading, they're not as strong as they've been in the past, but they're still a really good team.
Yeah, you can go ahead with Pleasant Valley. Actually, Tuscaloosa Academy, yeah, they go
Well,
up against them.
Pleasant Valley, they actually won their first ever playoff game last week in history of the school. The school has only been playing football since 1982, so they set a record with wins this year. They're 10-1. Led by a kid by the name of Braxton Saucer. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 215 pounds. He has some D1 offers right now. So I think with Pleasant Valley, I think in the north, I'm looking forward if it does happen. Pleasant Valley. I know we haven't gotten to this team yet, but Coosa Christian, I do feel like Coosa Christian may be the cream of the crop in 2A right now. I said they beat one 6A school. They should have beat another 6A school. But and the bracket, I do feel like Luverne, if they make it from the south, I do think Luverne and we'll be able to challenge Coosa Christian if both of those teams do make it, to the state championship in Class 2A.
Yeah, we have Southeastern, Red Bay, and Vincent, and Pisgah. I think Pisgah continues to be.
Oh, I forgot about Pisgah. Pisgah may put Pisgah's going to be there too. They're pretty strong too. So I forgot about them.
Yeah, so 2A is another classification that we're going to be watching really, really closely. The next classification is a classification that has already taken up a good bit of the show already. Just talking about how talented this 4A classification, not 4A, this 3A classification is, with the amount of teams that are still in it right now. When you take a look at this 6A group, when you talk about this first matchup, is a matchup we've already talked about. No real reason to focus much on it at this particular point in the show. But when you take a look at Southside Selma, of course you have Cottage Hill Christian. I'm trying to actually but when you look at this 3A bracket, you got Glenwood Trinity, Montgomery Academy versus Lee Scott Academy, Bayside Academy versus Randolph. We talked about that matchup. Mars Hill versus Winfield, Geraldine versus Westbrook Christian, Piedmont versus Fife, Gordo versus Colbert County. Just give me you guys can give me your quick thoughts about 3A as it stands right now. We go
To me, I think out of the north is really strong, but the north is going to be Mars Hill, and in the south, it just depends. But I'm thinking, what we talked about earlier, maybe Bayside Academy. What do you guys think on that?
You go, Larry.
I think that Bayside is the strongest team remaining in the South. I've had a chance to see Southside, Selma, Cottage Hill, and Bayside. You talk about Randolph County enough for me to have knowledge on that. I watched film on those guys. I feel like they need a little bit more than Mo Winston. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Bayside just off depth, just based off of their passing attack, that strong defense up front they have. So I would go with Mars Hill as well in the north and Bayside in the south.
Yeah, moving forward here, I'm gonna take a look at the 4A classification. I'm gonna write off the games for you guys. Hanley Jackson, we talked about that. American Christian, W.S. Neal, Mobile Christian, Bullock County, St. Michael versus Pleasant Grove. I think that matchup is interesting. Hamilton versus Deschler, Anniston versus Madison Academy, Plainview versus Alexandra, West Morgan versus Good Hope. I know you know a lot about some of these teams on here, Dex. I'm just what are your thoughts about the 4A classification?
I think in the south, I think we pretty much agree. Unless something really drastic happens, it's going to be between Jackson and St. Michael's in the south. And I know Larry has a little bit more knowledge about those teams. I think he was saying I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Larry. So I'm gonna let you, tell me who you think is going to come out the south. But in the north, I think it just depends, man. I know a lot of people's going with Anderson. They have a great athletes. It just depends on which Anderson team shows up. If they can cut down on the penalties, I think they have a chance. But I'm telling you, the team to watch out of the north is Alexandria. They played Anderson early in the year, and in my opinion, they probably should have beaten Anderson. They had a kid to get ejected, so that kid was giving Anderson fits. So right now, of course, you can't. West Morgan is really strong. You got Dessler. Madison Academy is a strong program, but just on paper, if I had to pick one out the North right now, I would think I would go either Anniston or Alexandria. I can't really say a solid Anderson or solid Alexandria, but Alexandria is actually a team that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off what Dick said. Guys, the whole 4A Region One is still in the playoffs. We got the whole region still in the playoffs. Mobile Christian has a Jason Todd, 2026 back, who is electric. He the real deal. He gave Jackson fits at time and St. Michael. They actually led in both of those games before ultimately losing and falling short. St. Michael's traveling to Pleasant Grove. That can get a little dangerous. I ain't gonna lie. That can get a little dangerous on the road, having to travel to the Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove is always a tough team. So, and then we look at Neal. Neal is one of those teams in 4A. They finished at the bottom, but those guys really are a tough bunch, man. So 4A South is tough, tough, tough still. But I got Jackson coming out, and like Dick said, everybody going with Aniston. I just can't see they can out talent a lot of teams, but like he said, Alexandria is coming. So I would go Jackson in the South right now and Aniston in the North.
Then we'll move along to 5A here. North Side, Viger, Central Clay County, Andalusia, Montgomery Catholic, Shelby County, Williamson, Elmore County, Briarwood, Russellville, Moody, Priceville, Scottsboro versus St. Clair County. Yeah, Fairview versus Jacksonville. What are your guys thinking about 5A right now? Starting with you, Larry.
Man, I can't believe Gunnersville let Priceville come back and beat them. They was up 21-7 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I think, and they lost
Oh,
that game. So that just made things easier, in my opinion, for Moody in the North. I don't see a team that's going to beat Moody in the North. The same thing with the South. Varga and Williamson look like they're on another collision course to see each other for a second time. Williamson won that game 22-14 in overtime a couple of weeks ago. So that's where I think that game is going to go. Uh, Northside, I do like Northside. I just don't feel like they have the athletes that a Viger has. Elmore County, they solid too, but Williamson has they have a 7A level defense. They got Notre Dame linebacker commit Ellis McGasson. They got Auburn DB commit Jalen Scott. They have two. They have Troy D line commit Dante Bush. They got Demarcus Dale Brown, who is going to be a top 2028 kid as well. So Williamson is loaded. I think they're on the collision course. I would still pick Viger and Moody right now, though, if I had to pick.
okay, cool. Yeah, I would say Moody in the North. Of course, Moody has Dozier. They have Barack Willis. They have a couple other kids. The defensive back, 28 kid is really good too. So of course you got Henry Smith on defense. Then you got Metals at running back. So they're a pretty complete team in my opinion. I got to watch them twice this year. So in the South, I don't. I know you know a little bit more about the South. Viger and Williamson, but I don't know. I think I'm gonna go with Williamson in the South. For my pick. So.
Then you move over to the 6A classification. You can make an argument that there's no bad game in this 6A bracket. Just take a look at the games. Like, look at these matchups on Benjamin Russell, Theodore, Hueytown, Russell County, Pike Road, Bessemer City, Saraland, Spain Park, Homewood, Hartselle, Clay Chalkville, Gaston City, Mountain Brook, Fort Payne, Parker, Muscle Shoals. This probably the most impressive matchup in a bracket from top to bottom outside of 7A. And take a look at that 6A classification. Just what are your thoughts on that one, Dex? The 6A classification.
Man, it's loaded, man, on both ends, South and North, man. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I know right now people speaking Saraland and Clay Chalkville. Clay Chalkville is going to be hard to beat in the North. No Parker's the state, being the state champion. Mountain Brook, all those teams are really loaded. So if I had to pick right now, I know Benjamin Russell, Coach Johnson, has those guys playing really well right now. But um, right now, I would say Saraland and Clay Chalkville would be the safe picks right now.
Yeah, for sure. You can go there.
Yes, man. again, loaded classification with depth. Saraland hasn't lost a beat. You could lose a Ryan Williams. You can lose a KJ Lacey. Now enter Jamison Roberts and Deshaun Spencer. So this train with Saraland keeps going. I think it's going to continue to go. I think they go to their fourth consecutive appearance in the 6A state championship game. I think they'll play Clay Chalkville in the North.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at 6A. I think just my give quick some of my quick thoughts. I probably think the teams that probably can throw a wrench into things are probably the team that probably is most likely could is probably Pike Road in terms of just schools that probably can throw a wrench into things. But we'll see how that 6A classification looks. 7A is a little bit different inside our state because their playoff is a little bit more limited. They are basically a couple of games away from their semifinals in terms of the 7A classification. But you have Thompson versus Mary G. Montgomery. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that right. That's how you pronounce it, Larry?
Yes.
I got it right. I always get confused with them having Montgomery in their name. They're not actually Montgomery, but Central Phoenix City versus Fairhope, Baker versus Opelika, Auburn versus Daphne. I think this is, if you had these teams in the 7A classification remaining in the past, it probably would have screamed Thompson versus Phoenix City in the state championship. Like we just basically close our eyes and they're in the state championship. But this is different because they are gonna have to meet each other before they reach the state championship in this season's bracket. Just what are your thoughts about the 7A, Larry?
Again, just like 4A Region 1, all of 7A Region 1 is still in this bracket, which is phenomenal. It's amazing. But Fairhope, they have Central coming down. That's gonna be tough. MGM having to travel to Thompson. It's always tough to play at Thompson. You ain't beating Thompson in Thompson. Uh, Daphne has one of the more better chances of beating Auburn and advancing. And then you got Baker and Opelika. Opelika, quote unquote, upset Hewitt last week, which means we like that whole side. We can have Daphne and Baker again in semifinals next week, which would be amazing. So if I had to pick right now, I'm going Central and Auburn. I've said that from the jump, even though everybody laughed at me because everybody's like, did you see what Vestavia did to Auburn early in the season? Playoffs come, that don't matter. Everybody's 0-0. So, yeah, that's my pick for right now.
I think I'm thinking I'm gonna go with Thompson, and I'm gonna go with a very, 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 very dark horse here. Larry's gonna think I'm crazy. I'm gonna go with Daphne and Thompson.
Yeah. That works. You gonna say anything, Larry?
I love it. I live in Daphne. I'm from the Daphne area, so I would love it to happen. I don't know, man.
When they win, tell them they gotta invite me down. Tell them I made it into fruition, so they gotta invite me down when they win.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, good luck. The 7A. I'm still going with Thompson. Like I said, they like Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. You don't bet against Mark Freeman and Thompson. That's just how it goes, at least for me in this 7A classification. But we'll see how things play out. Good luck to all of the players and the athletes, the family members of communities, all of these small town programs get an opportunity to cheer on their teams in the high school football playoff. Is a special moment. This is something that you definitely shouldn't take for granted. Enjoy it to the fullest, and we'll be back next week to break down the third round of the Alabama High School Athletic Association playoffs. As always, I'm joined by Dex October, Dex Preps. We love to have him working with Touch Alabama, and one of our top contributors, Larry Rudolph, as well. We'll see you guys on next week.